US 60. Yeah! Alright, today we are talking about US 60, the Great US 60, one of the great east-west US highways. It used to go all the way from coast to coast, but now it goes from Virginia to Arizona. It's an interesting road in that it's concurrent with both I-64 and I-10, despite not being a diagonal. Let's take a look at the route. We see it starts in Virginia Beach and goes to I-10 in rural Arizona, rural western Arizona, on its way to Los Angeles. US 60, of course, used to go into Los Angeles. Current California State Route 60 is former US 60. Of course, today we are only talking about the half on the eastern side of the Mississippi, so we will be ending in Cairo. All right, let's talk about westbound US 60. US 60 has no beginning sign. In fact, it does not have any sort of markers going westbound for some time. So I'm showing you the end sign for the eastbound direction just at this random intersection with General Booth Boulevard in Virginia Beach. So let's turn around and head north. We cross this bridge and we can see a view of Virginia Beach coming up here. Right here in the more center of town, we can look down one of these cross streets and see the beach. US 60 is not coastal itself, but the beach is quite nearby. Right here at 32nd Street, we are meeting US 58 at its beginning, but we get no sign for it, nor do we have a sign for US 60 at all yet. Fittingly, US 60 does end just a little bit south of US 58. Also, the name of the road we're on now is Pacific? What? That's the wrong ocean. Why would you possibly name a road a couple blocks away from the Atlantic Ocean Pacific? However, we do become Atlantic Avenue a little further north, so this same street is Pacific Avenue and then becomes Atlantic Avenue. I have no idea why. Up until now, we've been going north, and this is going to be our first curve to actually head west in the proper direction of US 60. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about highways and the places that they're designed to go to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you really like it, why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. Coming up here, we have a view of the bridge tunnel, US 13. We can kind of see that man-made island for the tunnel out in the distance. And here is where we're actually meeting US 13, and we are signed for Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. This was requested by Andrew Weishaar, and I was able to show you the bridge tunnel there too. So thank you so much for that request. Andrew requested that on the Patreon, and Patreon members can make requests with a $5 or more membership. Requests depend on how big of a membership you've got, but we've also got polls and new access to videos, and you won't be seeing this promo if you're watching on the Patreon. You can also make requests with a $5 super thanks on any video. We've got US 322 coming up soon. That'll be your next opportunity to do that. I believe the western half of US 60 requests are already closed at this point, and I appreciate everybody who does both of those. Looking at US 60 from US 13, we are getting west US 60 for Little Creek. Little Creek is just a little neighborhood of Virginia Beach. I wonder why they don't say Hampton. Right here, we are meeting Virginia 166, although we are not getting any sign for it, at least none that I could see. And this was requested by Andrew DeVore because 166 leads to Fuji Hana Sushi Restaurant, where he ate on his way home from Rehoboth Beach in June of 2023. So thank you so much for that request. And we've got a couple of late requests from Ryan Nichols. The first one here is Misako Restaurant right after we pass US 13. And he says when he used to live in Norfolk for a year, he went there at least once a week. It's got the most authentic ramen he's had on the East Coast south of Washington. Sounds like an awesome place, and thank you for that request. And Ryan says right after eating at Misako, he liked to head over to the Wawa across the street to grab a Coke or whatever. So I'm showing that here, and thank you for that request. As said, we do enter Norfolk, but we don't go through the main part of it. And we are in the Norfolk Beach-ish area, and this is the Airbnb that Ryan Nichols rents out every time he's in the area. It's right across the street from the ocean, so it looks pretty cool. And thank you for that request. Ryan also wanted to see anything Ocean View related, and we are on Ocean View Drive here on this part of US 60, although you really can't see the ocean pretty much anywhere because there's development between the road and the ocean. So right here is where you can actually see the ocean from US 60. Thank you for that request. Right here we are getting the start of US 460, but again we do not have a sign for it. Ryan Nichols also wanted to point out that 460 is a very significant route through Virginia and that he's been on the large majority of it, and he thinks it takes a very interesting route through the state. So thank you for that request. We are going to be merging with I-64, so Hampton Roads Tunnel, I-64 West 60. And here is what our Hampton Roads Tunnel looks like when we are on I-64. Right after crossing to the other side, we get an exit for US 60, Woodland Road, signed for Hampton University, who I remember beating Iowa State back in the day and them carrying that coach around. That was awesome. Here is a look at Hampton University. A little sad we don't go past Norfolk State. That's my favorite university in this region since they beat Missouri as like a 15 seed. We are meeting 664, and US 60 is angled toward the left at this intersection. Despite what that first sign looks like, we don't actually join 664. It's going to be a left exit, and we continue on 26th Street. We turn right after passing 664, and we're getting a 2 West 60, even though it is, in fact, West 60. And we're meeting US 17 and 258 for the James River Bridge. We are now signed for Fort Eustis. We are in Newport News now. Right here, we are passing past Christopher Newport University in Newport News, and this was requested by Matt Guendert. Thank you for that request. He requested that because he went to undergrad there. Here's our exit for Fort Eustis, so now we're going to need a new control city. And it looks like our next westbound control city is going to be Busch Gardens. So that's interesting. We're right near Busch Gardens, Colonial Williamsburg. And here is a look at Busch Gardens as we pass by it on US 60. Coming out of Busch Gardens, we just get US 60 signed for local hotels and restaurants, so not giving us much in the way of control cities. We do get control cities for I-64 instead. To be fair, US 60 is directly next to I-64 in these parts, so if you were going really anywhere beyond local hotels, you would want to get on I-64. A little further down the road, Williamsburg is now our new control city, which makes sense coming out of Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. We are not going to downtown Williamsburg. We are veering off toward the Visitors Center and heading toward I-64. So just to have an overview of what's going on here, you can see we are right next to I-64 throughout this stretch, pretty much from Hampton Roads until Richmond. Doesn't make sense to sign US 60 for anything too far. After Williamsburg, we see our next control city is going to be Lightfoot. Coming off of US 64, we are going to be turning left onto Richmond Road, so guess where that'll be heading. We see the other way, Rochambeau Drive. I'll Rochambeau you for it. And this is our next sign where we get any kind of control city whatsoever in Providence Forge. And we see we are now going to be signed for Richmond. On 295, we see US 60 is signed for Norfolk and Richmond. So Richmond would be the control city for us, although that's actually for I-64. Yeah, we see closer, if you go down that ramp, 60 will be signed for Seven Pines. We head closer into Richmond and we see the airport is just to the left of us, the Richmond Airport. Heading into town, we get the Edgar Allan Poe Museum. Maybe, apparently he's affiliated with Richmond. I had no idea. I thought he was a Baltimore guy only. And we're heading through what looks like a pretty cool part of town in Richmond. Never been to Richmond, but I would like to go. Here's the old train station in Richmond. You see the train tracks right there below the freeway deck. And at 14th Street, we are going to be turning left to stay on US 60. We pass right by the Virginia State Capitol. This is actually one block to the north of us, so I took a shot one block to the north because it's a better view than from US 60. On 14th Street, we continue heading down this cool looking area of Richmond. We turn to the south, and US 60 is now signed for Manchester Bridge, which I think is that bridge right in front of us. We cross the James River, and US 60 is going to be signed for Semmes Avenue, right lane. At our next freeway intersection, US 60 is signed for Midlothian Turnpike and the city of Midlothian. And now in Midlothian, we are signed for Powhatan. In Powhatan, we are meeting US 522, and at this point, we are now going to be signed for Lexington. And we're going to a more famous Lexington, but they mean the one in Virginia. Here at Sprouse's Corner, we meet US 15. We will continue straight. We have no concurrency. Right after meeting US 15, we get a mileage sign, and we see Lexington 69 miles away. Nice. Meeting US 29 north signed for Charlottesville, and now suddenly we are signed for Lynchburg, because Lynchburg is the control city of southbound 29, which we will be concurrent with. Lynchburg's a bigger city than Lexington, so I think that is the better way to go. In fact, one could argue signing Lynchburg even earlier. Here in Buena Vista, Virginia, we're meeting US 501. We will continue straight. We get out to I-81, and I-81 signed for Roanoke and Staunton. We are signed for Lexington. We're not far from Lexington here, and of course, whenever we meet I-81, US 11 is never too far away, so we are going to be meeting southbound US 11 here. Outside of Lexington, we are joining back with I-64 once again, and it is signed for Covington here. I do think that's interesting that they have Covington for getting onto I-64, because 64 should have a different control city at that point, but Covington is the control city for US 60, and they're giving us that on US 60, so that makes sense. So here is our actual exit for Covington with West 60 and North 220, and we get that weird 90-degree arrow there. We are splitting with US 220, and we are now signed for White Sulphur Springs. Before we get there, we rejoin I-64. West 60 is going to go with West 64. Still at this sign, it is White Sulphur Springs that it is signed, because we are getting the US 60 control, not the 64 control. And welcome to West Virginia. We enter it concurrently with I-64. Not too far into West Virginia, we have an exit for White Sulphur Springs with US 60. So again, that was why our control city was that for 60. In White Sulphur Springs, we will pick up the new control city of Louisville. And we are still in the I-64 orbit. We go under I-64 without an interchange here. Here in Louisville, we are meeting US 219 in downtown Louisville. And we're meeting I-64 again with no interchange. We go through some nice mountains in this area. It's quite scenic. We get a new control city of Rainelle, so we will turn right to head in that direction. And we're going to be meeting I-64. It is getting Lewisburg and Beckley as control cities. Those control cities are not intended for US 60 or any other US route, so we could probably do a little better on control cities there. In Rainelle, we are now getting Charleston as our control city, so we're shooting for the moon now, so far as West Virginia is concerned. We go through some nice mountains along the way here. Pretty nice scenery. We're meeting US 19, the great US 19, signed south for Beckley. We are signed now for Gauley Bridge. Here is the Gauley Bridge heading toward the town of Gauley Bridge. Nice scenery. Meeting State Highway 16, and we are going to be signed for Charleston once again at this point. And here's our thumbnail. Very nice picture heading toward Charleston in rural West Virginia. For a while, we are driving right next to the Kanawha River. And now we're meeting I-64 and I-77 as we head toward Charleston. 6477 for Beckley, 647760 for Charleston. We're briefly concurrent with those two interstates, but then we are taking leave and heading west for Kanawha Boulevard. We pass right by the state capital of West Virginia, so we're 2 for 2 for passing capitals. And shortly thereafter, we pass right by the governor's mansion in Charleston. We're heading toward the freeways again, so we will be turning left before we get there. And we pass right through downtown Charleston. Pretty interesting looking place. Never been. We meet I-64 once again, signed 279 and 277. We are also meeting US 119. We cross over the Kanawha River and head to the south side of Charleston. We're meeting I-64 once again, signed for Huntington and Charleston. And here we're meeting West Virginia 817, which was the original ending of US 35 before they upgraded it to a freeway. This was requested by Ian B because of this very reason. He also wanted to note that all of 817 is the old alignment of US 35 before it became a freeway. So thank you for that request. Our next mileage sign is not too long. We're getting Hurricane and Milton. No mention of Huntington, but that makes sense because Huntington traffic would be taking I-64. Here's what it looks like in downtown Milton. And I couldn't find any signs in Milton, but in Barbersville, we see 60 is signed for Milton and Huntington at the interchange with I-64. And a little further down the road, we get West Huntington. So Huntington is our control city, and this is coming off of the interchange with I-64. We pass by Marshall's Stadium, the Thundering Herd. Shout out Randy Moss. Hope you're doing okay, buddy. Man. And we are now in Huntington, so just getting West 60 and this bridge here in Huntington looks pretty nice. We're going to be exiting ourselves for West Huntington. West 60 will head to West Huntington, I-64 and South 52 heading toward Huntington and Charleston. The great US 52. Yeah, made a video about that. Coming out of West Huntington, Ashland, Kentucky is going to be our next bottom line control city. We pass into Kentucky. I couldn't find a welcome to Kentucky sign, but we see that Ashland is straight ahead ahead, West 60 straight ahead, and we are also meeting US 23. And here where we meet US 23, we will turn right for Ashland, and left would be southbound US 23. Here is downtown Ashland. This was requested by Dallas Bittinger, because it was a place that was near and dear to his dad's heart, and he had a house down there before they lost him. My condolences to you for that, and looks like a cool looking downtown here. I could understand why he would feel that way. And thank you for that request. We are leaving US 23. At this point, US 60 turns left and US 23 goes straight, but we don't have any signs telling us that. Next, we are getting West 60 to I-64 for Summit to US 52. Ohio is in the other direction. On I-64, this exit for Ashland, I complained about this in the US 64 episode, we just get 60. We don't get Ashland signed there, even though 64 is signed for Ashland and 60 is the way to Ashland. Makes no sense to me. The next city of any circumstance we pass is Grayson, so we will continue west on 60 from there. Here in Grayson, where we are meeting Kentucky 1 and Kentucky 7, these two highways will take you to Kentucky 9, which the DerpHog says is one of the most boring and scenic highways in the country. Thank you for that info, and thanks for that request. I appreciate that. And coming out of Grayson, we can see for the next little while, we are going to be very close to I-64 still, so there's no need to sign anything too far away. At our interchange with I-64, 60 is signed for Olive Hill. After Olive Hill, the next city we go through of any circumstance is Moorhead. Neither of these signs are for us, though. When we next meet I-64, 64 signed for Lexington, we're signed for Owingsville, nearby. And at the next interchange with I-64, we are signed for Mount Sterling. Here in Mount Sterling, we are meeting US 460 once again, and we will be shortly concurrent with it. And this is a cool looking downtown. And we see that our next place we will be signed for is Winchester, coming out of Mount Sterling. And we meet I-64 yet again. Here we are in Winchester, and Winchester was requested by Jeff Davis. He wanted to see the weird buildings. He says it's his hometown and weird. Not sure if this is what he had in mind exactly, but definitely cool looking buildings. And thank you for that request. Here's a little bit more of Winchester to try and guess if this was the weird buildings he was referring to, but it does in fact seem to be downtown Winchester. In Winchester, we meet Kentucky Highway 627, and this was requested by the New York Rambler, so thank you for that request. Interesting that we also have Wall Street here. Probably a little different than the other Wall Street. On Kentucky 859, we can kind of see our next controls because we have Winchester going the other way, so Lexington is now our primary control city. We're meeting I-75. I-75 signed for Richmond and Knoxville. They're always doing double ups here in this part of Kentucky. And northbound for Ashland, Cincinnati, and Louisville, and to I-64. We get 60 West Lexington because we head downtown. Right here is the inner Lexington loop. We are signed west downtown Lexington from here. In Lexington, we are meeting US 25 and US 421, and we are going to be turning right and joining them. And right here, we are heading through downtown Lexington, Kentucky. I've also not been there. Lots of US highways here in downtown Lexington. We're meeting US 27 and US 68. So pretty interesting junction here. A request from Jeff Davis for High Street and Broadway, and he said, you'll see. Well, not too surprising it is, in fact, Rupp Arena in Lexington, Kentucky, home of the blue blood-ish Kentucky Wildcats, although the Jayhawks are terrible this year, so I don't have much room to talk. Thank you for that request. We pass right by Red Mile Road, which will go over to the Red Mile Racetrack, which was requested by Colin Boyle. So thank you for that request. We can't really see it very well at all from US 60. So let's take a closer look. Here is the Red Mile Racetrack. It is a harness racing track, and he loves watching the track and the ultra-fast miles every fall. From Circle Road, we see West 60 is now signed for Versailles. Versailles. Coming out of Lexington, we are meeting with Keeneland, another horse racing track. I always thought Louisville was kind of the horse racing town. I guess Lexington's got a lot of stuff going on too. And this was also requested by Colin Boyle. And this is a thoroughbred track in Kentucky. So thank you for that request. Man of War Boulevard coming up there too. That's pretty cool. Jeff Davis also requested the castle in between Lexington and Versailles. Pretty interesting looking place here. Thank you for that request. He requested because it's cool, and I agree. Meeting the Bluegrass Parkway, one of many of Kentucky's parkways, signed for Lawrenceburg and Elizabethtown. And in Versailles, we see our next control cities are going to be Midway, Frankfort, and Louisville, kind of all three, and Hospital. We're meeting US 62 for the first but not the last time, and we will become concurrent with that. And we will split with 62 at this point. So 62 is heading to Midway. We're heading to Frankfort and Louisville. I should point this out. We got the Woodford Reserve Distillery that we're passing by right here. I would definitely stop there. Hey, Woodford Reserve, I'm giving you a free shout out. If you want to thank me and send me a bottle, be much appreciated. That stuff is the best. Meeting I-64 once again, signed for Louisville and Lexington, as it always is in this part of Kentucky. A look at that interchange from I-64, US 60 signed for Versailles and Frankfort. We're meeting US 421 once again, and we are going to be concurrent with it for a little bit. And we're meeting 460 once again, too, for Georgetown. We're now signed 60 west for downtown Frankfort. Here we are heading toward downtown Frankfort, but we are going to be taking a left over the bridge here. US 60 will be making a right turn here, and now we're signed for Shelbyville, Lawrenceville, and Louisville. And we look straight ahead, and we can see the Kentucky State House. Looks like it's under scaffolding, under construction right now. So we're 3 for 3 for passing state capitals now. Outside of Shelbyville, we are getting signed for Louisville from this point, from Kentucky 55. And I just got to point this out. This is great. 55 meets US 60 in between Simpsonville and Shelbyville. So I wonder if that's where they got the Shelbyville name for the Simpsons, Springfield's rival. We're going to be meeting 265 straight ahead Louisville and 2 I-64 if you get on South 265 Gene Snyder Freeway. We're meeting 264, and oh, you'll be shocked to see what it's signed for. Yeah, good old Watterson Expressway. Made a 264 video last year. You can check that out right over here. Right here, we're meeting Junction East. We're meeting US 42 is who we're meeting. But this sign, this US 42 shield, has been gone since at least 2007 when Street View first came into effect. Who knows how long it's been gone? Almost 20 years it's been gone. They ought to fix that by now. Maybe more than that. And we snake through Louisville, and 60 and 42 are going to head left at this point. And now we finally do get a US 60 and US 42 shield when we meet I-64 again. We're going to be meeting US 31E, and then our route through Louisville is actually pretty convoluted. It's not well signed. We get west something ahead. 60 west. Should we be turning left? Should we be going straight? They don't tell us. Apparently it is straight. We head into downtown Louisville, and this Aloft Hotel was requested by Colin Boyle because he won a free trip to the Breeders' Cup in 2018, and this is where he stayed with his mother. Thank you for that request, and that seems like a lovely place to stay in downtown Louisville there. Says he had a good view of US 60, and that makes sense because we're turning left right in front of it. We head down to Jefferson, and then we are going to be turning right to continue on US 60, but no signs tell us that. We pass right by 400 West Market, the tallest building in all of Kentucky, building I know most associated with Louisville. So I skipped to the end of Louisville because it's very hard to keep track of 60. There's really no signage. If you wanted to follow 60 through Louisville, you'd really have to know what you were doing. You couldn't follow the signs. So here we are meeting US 264 again, Watterson Expressway. We just been through Shively there, and we see that South 31W and West US 60 are signed for Fort Knox. We split with 31W. 31W heads on to Fort Knox, and we're now going to be signed for Hardinsburg and Owensboro. And in Hardinsburg, I got to show this, US 60 Dragway. Anytime they name something after the road I'm doing, I'm going to try and show it. Except for Route 66, because there's 8 million things named after it. Meeting US 231, and we will continue to be signed for Owensboro. We're meeting Interstate 165, signed south for Bowling Green. This is kind of one of the random 3-digit interstates that everybody forgets about, even though it's a pretty long one. South 231 coming up shortly. And from Owensboro, we see US 60 is now signed for Henderson. We're on kind of a freeway ourselves right now, and we are getting an exit for South 431. We meet the Audubon Parkway, signed for Henderson. That's actually going to be your faster way to Henderson than following US 60. But when we meet northbound 331, signed for downtown Owensboro at the end of our freeway, 60 is signed for Henderson once again, just because there's not that much on the way to Henderson. In Henderson, we are meeting US 41. This is where I ended my US 41 video. You can check that out over here. US 41 signed north for Evansville, south for Madisonville, and 2 I-69. Coming from the US 41 perspective, 60 and Alt 41 are signed for Henderson here. And here is downtown Henderson. We've seen Henderson show up in quite a few videos, but we've never seen downtown. We are going to be heading straight, and Morganfield will be our new control city. We're meeting US 60 Bypass. The Bypass is signed for Sturgis. We're signed for Morganfield on mainline US 60. And here in Marion, we are meeting US 641, and we will be turning right, and we will be signed for Paducah. We crossed the Tennessee River on this lovely looking bridge. And now we're going to be meeting US 62 again. So here it is. We're in downtown Paducah and US 60-62 are straight ahead to I-24, turn left. And US 62 and 60 will be splitting again, but we will see it again. We meet US 45. US 45 will take you up to Metropolis, Illinois. I've actually done that route to see the Superman statue before coming back to I-24. And here we're meeting I-24 and we're getting East Nashville and West St. Louis. So good signage there with that West St. Louis. But as soon as you get into Illinois, suddenly you're signed to I-57 instead of St. Louis. And coming from I-24, US 60 is signed for Paducah and Wickliffe. I don't know why they put it in Wickliffe. That's the very last little town in Kentucky. In Wickliffe, less than 1,000 people, we are meeting US 51 and US 62 once again. On our tri-concurrency, we are getting Cairo, Illinois, 5, and Charleston, Missouri, 17. So kind of cool to get two different out-of-state control cities less than 20 miles away. And now we cross the Ohio River. We finally leave Kentucky. As you may have guessed, US 60 is in fact the longest highway in Kentucky. It goes from end to end in Kentucky, from Ashland to Wickliffe. That's a long way. And here is our Illinois sign on this narrow bridge of this tri-currency of 51, 60, and 62. Right here we're going to split, so northbound 51 is going to be turning right and US 60 and 62 will be turning left. This intersection was requested by Boss King Inc. because the concurrency of three important highways and the fact that the Illinois portion of US 60 and 62 is under a mile long, which he always found interesting. So thank you for that request. We're at the same intersection, we're just looking closer up. So you see Cairo is to the right. We are so far south in Illinois that we're south of Cairo. It is to the north of us on US 51, and Sikeston is signed for the left along with Fort Defiance State Park. Here is the entrance to Fort Defiance State Park. It's also the name of a park in Tacoma that I used to go to. And finally, we will cross the Mississippi River and head into Missouri. So the Missouri state line is right there, and that is where we shall end this portion of US 60. We'll be back on US 60 in a couple of weeks to talk about the western half. All right, let's talk about Todd's the way it should be for US 60. I'm going to say for US 60 should be Hampton, Newport News, Williamsburg, a bunch of small towns before Richmond, then Richmond, Midlothian, Powhatan, Lexington, Covington, Lewisburg, Raynell, Charleston, South Charleston, St. Albans, Huntington, Ashland, Grayson, Olive Hill, Moorhead, Owingsville, Mount Sterling, Winchester, Lexington, Versailles, Frankfort, Shelbyville, Louisville, Fort Knox, Hardinsburg, Owensboro, Henderson, Morganfield, Paducah, La Center, and Cairo. Although you could argue for signing for Cairo a little bit earlier, but then again, Cairo isn't that big and also doesn't take the most direct route to Cairo because of the other roads that go there. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. We're going to be back with a cool gimmick next week, so there's not requests available for that. US 322 requests are wide open, I can assure you. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly did. And until next time, my name is Todd, and keep on trucking.